Hey everyone, welcome to Clock Cup Season 2. Before we begin, let's go over the group stage draw procedures. There were 32 qualifying competitors that were placed into 4 pots. Those pots were Pot 1, Pot 2, Pot 3, and Pot 4. Pot number was determined by the qualifying seed. Seeds 1 through 8 were placed into Pot 1. Seeds 9 through 16 were placed into Pot 2. Seeds 17 through 24 were placed into Pot 3. And seeds 25 to 32 were placed to Pot 4. There were 8 groups of 4 competitors, labeled A through H. Each group will have at least 1 competitor from each pot. We'll start with Pot 4 first. 1 competitor will be randomly selected from Pot 4. Once this competitor has been selected, they'll go into the next available letter, group, determined by the alphabetical order. We could see here that Group A would be first, so this competitor will go into Group A. But now there's going to be a separate draw that determines their placement. The placement determines the order of the fixtures in between each person in their group. They can either go into positions 2, 3, or 4, as position 1 is determined for outer people in Pot 1. This competitor will be randomly drawn into a position, and then we'll move on to the next competitor that will be randomly drawn from Pot 4. This competitor will have to go into Group B. After their random fixture draw has been determined, the other competitors will be drawn into the other groups. This process will occur until Pot 4 is cleared. Next, we'll move on to Pot 3. Pot 3 follows the same exact procedures. 1 competitor will be randomly selected from Pot 3. Once this competitor has been selected, they'll go into the next available group. As you can see here, Group A would be the first one. However, now they can only go into positions 2 or 3. This is because position 4 has been taken up by the competitor in Pot 4, and position 1 is already determined for Pot 1. So this competitor will be randomly drawn in one of these positions. Once that occurs, another competitor will be drawn. This competitor will have to go into Group B. However, the other positions here would be 3 and 4, since position 2 was already taken up by the other competitor in Pot 4. This competitor will be randomly drawn, as so for all the other competitors, until Pot 3 has been cleared. And then we'll move on to Pot 2. Again, Pot 2 follows the same exact procedures. 1 competitor will be drawn. After that competitor is selected, they'll go into the next available group. However, here, the next position available is 3. This is the only remaining position, so that competitor will have to go into position 3. This process will continue until all the remaining positions have been filled by Pot 2. Then we'll move on to Pot 1. Pot 1 follows the same procedures, only this time when a competitor is drawn and selected, they'll go into the next available group and immediately take up position 1. This process continues until all the competitors' spots have been filled. We now have our groups for Clock Cup. They'll go into a round-robin tournament facing each other in their own group until 2 group leaders have been determined, a group winner and a group runner-up. Once these leaders have been determined, they'll immediately advance to a round of 16. In this round of 16, there will be a separate draw that will involve 8 paths, numbered 1 through 8. There are 2 pots, group winners and group runner-ups. Each group winner will be assigned to one of the 8 paths in the first part of the draw. In the second part of the draw, the group runner-ups will also be paired with the group winners. Group winners and group runner-ups from the same group will not be paired. This will determine the round of 16 matches until winners have been declared in all the matches. Once these winners have been declared, the 8 remaining contestants will go into a quarterfinal draw. In this quarterfinal draw, we'll have a bracket stage format. In this bracket stage format, the competitors will be randomly drawn into the bracket. This bracket will continue until a Clock Cup winner has been determined. Are we good? Alright, let's begin.
Hello. Welcome to the Clock Cup group draw. This camera is not in focus. Alright, now it should... Yeah, okay. Alright, so this is it. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this. I know that might have been a little bit confusing, but let me just help you out here. So we are going to be starting with Pot 4. So pot 4 will contain our slowest qualifying competitors, and we're going to draw them right now into those groups. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay. This is very fancy. Alright. Okay. So, let's draw the competitors. I will make this a little. Alright. So, in pot 4, the contestants are going to be on this side, or this side of the screen. Over here, we have all these contestants, and I will be drawing them out one by one. So, let's begin. Alright, our first contestant going into Group A. We have Oliver Castledine. He'll be going into Group A. We're going to determine his placement. And they'll be going into place A2. So Oliver will be going into place A2. I will update that for you quickly. So that should be showing up in your screen in just a little bit. All right. Okay, let's move on to the next competitor. Wait, okay. Let me just update this. All right. Our next competitor in Group B will be Cameron Littlejohn. Let's see what place. Let's say what place he'll be going into in Group B. He'll be going into place B3. So Cameron Littlejohn will be going into place B3. Alright. Okay, we'll be moving on to Group C. Group C, we have Eddie Arts. Let's see what group he will be. Let's see what place he'll be going into. We'll be going into place C2. Alright, so Eddie will be going into place C2. Alright, let's move on to the next pot. Caden. We have Caden in Group D. See what position they'll be going into. They'll be going into position D2. So Caden has gone into position D2. Let's see. All right. On to the next competitor. We have Simon Groski. Let's see what he'll be going into Group E. Let's see what position he'll be going into. He'll be going into position E3. So Simone will be going into position E3. All right. Move on to group F. Group F will be Caleb Carney. Caleb Carney will be going into group F. Let's see what position we'll be going into. F3. So we'll be going into F3. Alright. And finally, move on to the second bow. Left. That competitor will be Arif. See what position they'll be going into. They'll be going into position G4. Okay, whoops. I forgot to also clear Caleb from that. And that leaves us with Edwin. I'm just going to pull him out really quickly. Alright, let's pull out Edwin. So, let's see here. Just confirm. Edwin Shen will be in Group H, and he will be going into position H2. So, H2 for Edwin. Alright, that concludes group pot 4, and now we'll be moving on to pot 3. So, okay. Moving on to pot 3, we have Cameron, Jaden, Oliver, Nathan, Mateo, Peter, Jules, and Dario. Alright, let's get pot 3 here. And we will begin. The first competitor from pot 3 going into Group A. That will be Cameron Miller. Cameron Miller will be going into Group A. Let's see what position he will be in. He will go into position A3. Cameron has gone into Group A, into position A3. Alright, let's move on to the next competitor. The next competitor here is Jules Graham. Let's see what position he'll be going into. He'll be going into position B4. So Jules will be going into position B4. Let's get that set up. All right, let's move on to the next competitor. We have Nathan. Nathan will be placed into Group C. Let's see what position he will be getting. Oops, sorry. So these are the two slips, so I'll just choose randomly. They'll be going into position C4. C4 for them. Alright. Okay, beautiful. Let's move on to group D. In group D, we have Oliver Paulo in group D. Let's see what position we'll be getting. He will be in position D3. So Oliver Paulo will be in position D3. All right, let's move on to group E. In group E, we have Dario in group E. See what position they will be in. Will be in position E4. Dario will be in position E4. All right. Now let's move on to F. F will include Mateo Dumar. Let's see what position it will be placed in. Mateo will be placed into F2. Position F2. So Mateo has been placed into F2. Alright, let's move on to the final one. This will be for Group G. In Group G, we have Jaden Lin. Let's see what position we'll be going into. To position G. We'll be going into position G3. G3 for Jaden. All right. And finally, we're going to move on to the last ball. And that will be, of course, Peter. Let's see what group we'll be going in. Let's see what position we'll be going into. Excuse me. We'll be going into position H4. So Peter will be going into position H4. All right, that concludes pot 3. We will now move on to pot 2. In pot 2, we have Ryan Breen, Carter Williams, Samuel, Anders, Evan, Brendan, Victor, and Daniel. All right. So, without further ado, let's move on with pot 2. That rhymed. Pot 2 out of here. All right. Let's move on to pot 2. All right. let's begin. First competitor from pot 2 going into group A is Samuel. Samuel will be in group A in position A4. Next we move on to group D. Group B will be Evan Millsap. Will be going into position B3. All right. Now let's move on. Group C. Group C will be none other than Daniel Partridge. He'll be going into position C3. Alright, let me just clear off the ones I drew. Alright, now let's move on to Group D. In Group D, we have Carter Williams. Carter Williams will be going into Group D, into position D4. Alright, let's move on. Group E. Group E. You have Brendan Dunnigan. Brendan Dunnigan is in Group E, in position E3. Alright, let's move on to the competitors. The other positions. We'll be moving on to Anders. Anders will be in Group F, in position F4. All right. Move on to the final ball. That has to be competitively drawn. That competitor will be Ryan Breen. Ryan Breen will be going into Group G in position, let's check here, position G2. Alright, and finally, the last competitor will be, let's see here, this competitor is going to be in pot 2, Victor. Victor will be going into position H3. Alright. And finally, the pot most of you have probably been waiting for. Pot 1. Here we go. In pot 1, we have Carter Thomas, Tommy Cherry, Jacob Chambers, Reed W. Richardson, Zaid Chaudhary, Sam Shaw, Vishwa Sankar, and Martin Suin. Alright, I will get the pot 1. And without further ado, let's begin. Some of them are stuck in here. Alright, let's move on to pot 1. Let's see. All 8. Alright. Let's move on to the first pot. In Group A, we have Martin Suin. Martin Suin will be going into Group A. All right. So we just clear that. All right. Let's move on to the next competitors. In Group B, we have Vishwa Sankar in Group B. All right. So on. In C. In C, we have Tommy Cherry. Tommy Cherry will be going into Group C. Let's move on to Group D. Group D, we will have Group D. We have Carter Thomas. Carter Thomas will be going into Group D with Carter Williams. Oh, that's gonna be fun. All right. In Group E, we'll have Sam Shaw. Sam Shaw will be going into Group E. In Group F, we have again Reed W. Richardson. Reed W. Richardson will be going to Group F. All right, let's move on to Group G. In Group G, we have Zaid. Zaid will be Group G. Let's go into there. And finally, in Group H, we have the one and only great Jacob Chambers, also known as Cham. They will be going into Group H. Alright, thank you all for watching the Claw Cup group stage draw. These are your groups on the bottom of your screen, and I hope you all had fun. I will see you all tomorrow for the first match.